This week on the Unabated podcast, Jason Weingarten joins the show as we talk about baseball futures, spring training betting, and so much more. It's a great show. Let's get to it.
If the guy goes unabated, that's the new word, unabated. That's too big a word. That's like mayonnaise. I'm assuming that's the biggest word I know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome on into the Unabated podcast. I'm Thomas Viola, and joining me as always, Mr. Unabated himself, Captain Jack Andrews. Jack, baseball season is here. We've got a great guest in Jason Weingarten, or Spreadapedia himself, joining us today, as always, to talk some baseball futures, to talk spring training betting. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you a little bit about approaching it from the top-down perspective when it comes to betting on baseball. Is this still a sport that you can reasonably top down to start off?
Oh, sure. In fact, as markets tend towards efficiency, that actually enables top-down betting. It's actually harder to top down a very inefficient market.
Yeah.
As people have found with props, right? Props are largely inefficient, and it makes top-down betting really hazardous to do. But with a market like this, where we know we have market-making leaders, we know we have certain sports books that are very good at making sharp baseball lines, it makes it that much easier to practice top-down in baseball. Now, the downside of top-down betting baseball is that this season never ends. And trust me, 15 games a day for the next basically 6 months, it is just a grind. So if you're going to practice top-down betting, you need to separate yourself from this desire that I need to be on top of this every single morning and in the afternoon when lineups are confirmed. It's a real grind through your summer.
Now, you talk about being there for lineups and in the morning. What are the best times to be around the screen when it comes to baseball?
So yeah, for a top-down bettor, you want to be looking for when the market is moving with some kind of signal. And that tends to be, I'm East Coast, you're West Coast. For me, it tends to be between 8 and 10 a.m. East Coast time. And you're starting to see limits start to rise up. You're starting to see market makers establish the line they want to spend through the day with. And then around 3 p.m. Eastern time is when you're going to see the lineup start to be confirmed for the East Coast games, typically 3 to 4 hours before game time. And that's when you can make substitutions, right? There's the effect of removal that's true in any sport where the drop off from a starter to a backup is significant. Basketball and baseball are two good examples of that. So if you see that the power hitter is being rested today, well, that's a drop off. If you see that a different player is batting in the leadoff position today, that's a difference to account for. So a lot of people tend to see the market move right around lineups being confirmed each day.
Now, you've also talked about baseball being a relatively solved market. What does that mean? And does it mean that it's because you just got done talking about how you can still absolutely top down bet it?
Yeah. So baseball is different from other sports in that there's really no clock, and every game state in baseball happens again and again and again. And we play 162 games a year per team. So there's thousands of games in a single season sample size and hundreds of not hundreds, but at least 100 years of baseball being played. So everything that happens in baseball has happened before. And that makes the run expectancy or probability of something happening pretty well known. We know that with a man on second base and nobody out, the expected run creeps over 1 and makes it like 1.1 runs are expected to be scored in that half inning. That's the sort of solving of baseball that I tend to refer to. It doesn't mean that the probability of the entire game has been solved. And there are effects such as lineup dynamic situations that would change it from 1 minute to the next in terms of like, oh, right now this player was scheduled to be in, he's going to be out. That changes the probability, and therefore that's what creates the market differences that you can take advantage of if you're a top-down bettor.
Very interesting. Well, Jack, I think that it's time that we get into talking about some futures and more. And of course, talking about the difference between spring training, baseball, and regular season and all that. To get into it, let's bring Jason on, shall we?
Yeah, he's one of the best I've seen. So let's get to it.
Welcome on into the show, Spreadapedia himself, of course, longtime guest, and you might have known him as the host of Deep Left last season with us here, Jason Weingarten. Jason, thank you so much for being back with us here to talk some more baseball today. Are you excited? I mean, spring training is in full swing. We're getting to it here.
Yeah, it really seems like spring training really hit the ground running this year. Like I was watching the Dodger game, or actually I was listening to it on the radio yesterday, and the announcer was saying, "It's so weird. It's February 27th, at February 28th now, but February 27th, Dodgers have already played like 5 or 6 games. It's just doesn't feel right, you know? Like I'm still getting into the schedule, and there's a full slate of games every day. The one thing I really enjoy about this time of the year, more so than most other parts of the baseball season, is especially on the West Coast. You get the early wave of games, the noon, first pitch games on the East Coast. Then you get the second wave spring training games on the West Coast. So you get to get up early, do your betting, and get on with the day. There's not really a serious live betting market for these, so you make your bets. You get to watch some baseball early. You get the rest of the day to do stuff, and it's nice because you kind of get acclimated to the schedule for baseball and getting up and getting back into things and getting into a routine. So I really do enjoy this time of year, especially getting into March, and daylight savings will give us the extra light at the end of the day in a week or so. So nice time of year.
So you already mentioned that live betting, there's not really a market for here, but when it comes to spring training betting versus the regular season, what are some of the other key differences? What are some of the other things that A, you have to look at and consider, and B, just ways it changes your approach?
Well, so there is a live betting market for spring training. I don't necessarily recommend you spend too much time getting into it, and it's just kind of one of those things that like I'm sure there's thousands of edges to be exploited with spring training and knowing, oh, the lineups are about to change, the backups are coming in. I just don't want to spend the time torturing myself to make the extra money there. I do love spring training though, and so to your point, there's a whole bunch of things to look out for. And in this day and age, with the beat writers and all the information on Twitter, you get a full look at who's playing ahead of time, who's pitching ahead of time, who's expected to pitch in what order even. So they're giving you all the information here. It's pretty great. Like you don't have to worry about unexpected things coming out of the bullpen unless the game's already out of hand and they're out of pitchers, whatever. There's also ties. You got to keep in mind games do end in ties in spring training. It is a very unsatisfying feeling for the most part, unless you were losing and all of a sudden you get a lucky tie at the end. Then it's kind of one of the greatest things. It's kind of like a mulligan in baseball betting. You don't get those often. So yeah, there's a couple different things to kind of look out for. Another one, mainly being the Florida spring training versus the Arizona spring training. Florida, it's much more spread out. So a lot of times guys don't even travel with the team. They have a travel squad if they're going on a game 2 hours away or whatever. And, so there's a lot of little intricacies to keep in mind about spring training betting, but it is a very exploitable and enjoyable market.
Hey, Jason, you and I have both been doing this for a while. I don't do a lot of spring training betting, but am I recalling correctly? It was only like 3 or 4 years ago. You couldn't get totals on spring training games until like late March. And now I notice like these games last week all had totals and run lines attached.
Yeah, I've noticed that more too lately, is that you get totals. That's one of the things that I bet a lot more money lines in spring training. There's a few situational totals I like betting, especially in Florida. But in general, I'm not crazy about totals in spring training. If I was, I would blindly be betting overs because you're just getting those end of game rookies. You never want to be relying on a team's AAA, not even trying to make the major league roster, trying to make the minor league organization. You don't want to be relying on those pitchers getting you outs with unders. It's just torture. I've done this. Like, just bet the games. I'm telling you, you get up, you make your bets early, you go on with your day. It's spring training for betting too. You don't have to go crazy in March or even February here. But like I said, I do love this time of year, and there are a lot of angles and a lot of things to be exploited here if you're paying attention. It's not just basketball this month.
Now, of course, you're also known not just for betting on baseball, but you're especially known for the baseball futures markets. Certainly a lot of awards markets, Rookie of the Year, stuff like that. But when it comes to this time of year and it comes to evaluating some of these players, what are you looking for in spring training? Are you looking at some of these guys to find your breakout candidates for the year, or are these people that you're looking at that you've had your eye on since last season or beyond?
For Rookie of the Year, the most important thing I always stress is you have to have opportunity. You have to have path to playing time. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you're going to get 200 at bats, you're not going to win Rookie of the Year. You need to be consistently getting at bats. You need to be, in the headlines. Got to be, scoring runs, hitting home runs, doing all the things you got to do. When it comes to pitching, I tell people keep in mind, look at a guy like Spencer Strider, pull up his rookie numbers. Dominant pitcher, got like 8 first place votes, lost to his own teammate. For a lot of these pitchers, unless you're giving me some very, very, very thought out case as to why this guy is such a short number, I'm almost not interested in any pitcher for the Rookie of the Year market at any number under maybe like 80 to 1 or 100 to 1 or something. I just don't think there's any value. Although every year you do have to kind of go through and take things, into consideration. What's different this year than all other years? And this year you got Yamamoto, the Japanese import, coming to LA, and it's kind of tanking the market. I see FanDuel has them like plus 180 for Rookie of the Year. So theoretically that does create value if you want to oppose a pitcher like that. But it's an interesting situation because we're looking at somebody who's potentially the ace of, or at least co-ace of a, all-time team. So there's an interesting situation there. There's a ton of interesting situations with the awards markets and different player props and stuff this year. If you want me to go through some of the other ones.
We do, but you touched on something that I wanted to ask you about, and that's the effect the Dodgers are having on the market. How badly are they skewing this market right now? And is that creating value on other teams and non-Dodgers players in the market?
Yeah, I mean it's so tough because you can just see what they're doing, and they're putting together such they're sparing no expense essentially. And other teams are debating, well, can we afford this? Can we do this? The Dodgers are just like, sure, we'll take this guy. We'll sign this guy. We'll do whatever we want. We're gonna win the championship. So it's really interesting because you look like the MVP market. Otani is 9.5 to 1. Mookie Betts is 6.5 to 1. Is that incorrect? Is that reasonable for Otani, being a hitter only this year? It's probably totally reasonable. I couldn't tell you which one of Betts, Freeman, and Otani should be the favorite for the Dodgers for MVP. Like, it's creating value in the sense that when you have 3 MVPs, you have no MVP. I'd probably be more interested in Acuna again. The numbers he put up, if he can repeat the year he put up, back-to-back MVPs isn't out of the question. Whereas with the Dodgers, whatever Mookie Betts is doing, it's going to be like, yeah, but did you see what Shohei Otani did? And what Shohei Otani did, you'd be like, yeah, did you see what Mookie Betts did? And, the Dodgers have a chance to be a dominant team. They also have a chance to be a dud. I don't think we have to worry about that, but there's always a chance, super teams underperform. I don't see how the Dodgers aren't, I don't want to say in the World Series or in the NLCS. It's just such a well-built team. Even their AAA pitching staff, has guys that would probably be starting for major league teams right now. It's just, I don't know what to compare it to. And I think, the Braves are really the only competition they have keeping them from being in a World Series this year, other than, their own incompetence or their historical failures in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm telling you, just give me the 85 win Rockies in the NLDS with the power of friendship. That's what I want to see here. Take down the Dodgers. But going back to what you were talking about with some other interesting situations going on, yeah, it is about that time when you're starting to place some of your future bets for the season. Walk us through some of what's going on in your head, what you're looking at right now.
I'm looking at the AL market this year, and you got Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, teammates at the top. I'm using FanDuel for the odds today. Judge is 5.5 to 1. Soto's 6 to 1. I think it's like reasonable. Maybe flip those numbers. I think Soto personally is the better player. better all around player. And the thing, I touched on this morning when I was on Gil's show, and I think Gil and Kelly brought it up. Aaron Judge is on the record saying that he has the toe injury he had last year is going to have to be managed consistently the rest of his career. And toes, wrists, little things in baseball, create huge problems for players. It changes your swing, it changes your mechanics, and little changes to your mechanics screw up, make huge differences. Wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying Judge is not going to be an all-star anymore, not going to be a great player, but like, I think Soto is the guy on this team. I do think there's a chance that if all goes well and all health is positive for the Yankees, that the Judge Soto combo is a World Series winning middle of the lineup. That has the potential to be the best combo in baseball. But I am worried about Aaron Judge's health. I am looking at some of his home run unders because I just don't think, the older he gets, the more likely he's not going to be playing 150 games. He's going to be getting less at bats, injuries. He's more prone for injuries just the older you get. But I do like the Yankees this year. I'm telling you all this whole negative case on Judge, and I'm saying, well, the Yankees really have a chance this year. I love the middle of their lineup. Corey Seager, one of my favorite players. Same thing, though. He never stays healthy. Playoff Corey Seager, one of the best players in baseball regular season. Corey Seager, I don't think I'm bet on him at 8.5 to 1. Yordan Alvarez, pretty good price at 11 to 1. If he stays healthy, there's a guy who you're going to see that price have quickly if he starts the season hot. Kyle Tucker, same thing, 15 to 1. I love Kyle Tucker. Then farther down, I just want to point out one guy who's getting no respect in the AL MVP market, and that's Jose Ramirez. Best player on the Cleveland Guardians, and always criteria for MVP is you got to be the best player on your own team. Checks that box. Guardians potentially could win the AL Central, not out of the question. But 22 to 1 for a guy who has similar projections to Mike Trout. When you take away Ohtani from the pool this year, is like insulting. I think that number is just Jose Ramirez being overlooked. I think that's the best value so far I've seen in the American League MVP market. Then the NL, like I said, you add Ohtani, you got the Dodgers. I really don't know what the deal at the top there is other than Acuna deserves to be the favorite. The one thing I want to point out in the NL market is Fernando Tatis 10 to 1 continues to be like one of the worst prices in baseball. Like that guy should be like 100 to 1 for MVP. I'd love to write tickets on Fernando Tatis to win the MVP. He has a bad shoulder. He strikes out a lot. He's playing outfield. He's not a shortstop anymore. There's just like so many negative check marks to Tatis. There's no reason I could see he's 10 to 1. I like every player, the next 5 players, next 10 players after him better, to be honest. But yeah, that's basically my thoughts on the early MVP market. If that's what I got there.
So when you're doing this analysis, do you ever take into consideration like the favorite long shot bias that exists in multi-way markets, where often the long shots have more of the vig applied to them? It's just sort of, a basic bookmaking method. And does that drive your need to line shop and to find a good price? I know, Jason, from knowing you for a while, you are a very qualitative bettor. You kind of go by your own sense of value. It's not necessarily run it through some model that, spits out projections, and that would be hard to do in, subjective market like MVP. But does it drive your line shopping to know that, okay, even though Ramirez is 22 to 1, I know that there could be a lot of vig applied to him in this multi-way market. And do you seek to find 10% better than that number? Are you seeking to find 25 to 1 somewhere else?
Absolutely. In fact, I know there was actually 25 to 1 because I was shopping earlier today. So yeah, you're always looking for the best price naturally. So having the most outs and most access to different books and different places is always important. I think the thing to point out, the first thing for something like MVP that I like to do, I have sort of a simple criteria for like I said, you need to be the best player on your own team, et cetera, et cetera. So I go through the little checklist real quick, but you can throw out a whole bunch of names pretty quickly. You go down to the bottom of the list and see like, Tristan Casas, Josh Naylor, Giancarlo Stanton. Like what has to happen for Stanton to be the MVP on the Yankees? Like so many things. I can just throw that out immediately. Gleyber Torres, Pablo Lopez. Like I don't care what number you put on these guys in the VIG, at the bottom of the pool for this stuff, because none of it matters. We literally cross off every single one of these guys day one. And if I miss one of these guys and somebody at the 200 to 1 or 500 to 1 level pops off and wins an MVP, hey, like congratulations, it's baseball. But like I'm looking at the 200 to 1 list and I see like maybe one player that I could make a case for. And then you wonder like, well, why is Garrett Cole 200 to 1 to win MVP? And why is Brett Rooker 200 to 1 to win MVP? Like, Garrett Cole at least has a case. There's a case the pitcher's going to win every once in a while. Brett Rooker has, you can make him 2 million to 1 to win MVP. He's still not going to win. But yeah, I throw out a ton of names at the beginning of the year. And if I'm wrong, if a guy's going to beat me, a guy's going to beat me. It happened a couple of years ago with Justin Verlander. I was dead convinced Justin Verlander coming off Tommy John wasn't going to win a Cy Young, and he just dominated all season. And, like if a guy's going to beat me that I'm against, I'm okay with it. For the most part, at this point, I'm pretty, pretty happy with my ability to scout the players. Yeah, every once in a while I still miss, but like I said, if a guy's gonna beat me, a guy's gonna beat me.
Jason, last year we had our season-long show, and one of the things we were following around was O'Neal Cruz and whether he could win Rookie of the Year for us. Unfortunately, Corbin Carroll stole that from him. Would have
You mean
been very
Ellie,
fun.
not O'Neal. O'Neal's the Pirate shortstop who got
Oh,
hurt
right,
early.
right. I'm thinking of Ellie De La Cruz.
Yeah, two De La Cruzes, both very interesting players.
Mm-hmm. But last year, that was our ride. We had a fun time with it. It didn't come through in the end. Anyone that you've got in the Rookie of the Year market, obviously Yamamoto is tanking it on one side, but anyone you've got the other way that you're looking at?
Well, so Yamamoto's interesting because he's a guy that I would actually be interested in backing in the Cy Young market if I can get a better price than like 10 to 1. I think 10 to 1 is probably really short for an unknown Japanese pitcher, coming into MLB. I can't back him at 10 to 1, but if you like a guy and you think he's a potential Cy Young winner, you would think he's a lock for the MVP, or sorry, excuse me, the Rookie of the Year, right? Like if he's a potential Cy Young contender, I don't see how he wouldn't win Rookie of the Year if he puts up the numbers, that he's projected for. Jackson Churrio's guy we talked about last year on the Brewers. He signed one of those long-term extensions to buy out his arb years, so it wouldn't surprise me if he makes the club out of spring training. But remember, with all these young guys, it is always in the team's best interest to publicly say they need to work on X, Y, and Z at AAA for exactly as many weeks as it takes to get another year of control on their contracts. And that's the thing to remember. Don't get too caught up in what happens in April and the beginning of May and what the market looks like and who's the favorite, because the race really hasn't even started yet. A lot of the potential prospects haven't even come up. Always, like I said, getting more at bats and being there, like Gunnar Henderson being there day one probably helped him last year, gave him time to work through his poor, April and May. And again, like you look at his numbers last year, he won Rookie of the Year. He hit 32, 33 home runs, whatever. His numbers in April were atrocious, and plenty of people probably thought he should be back in AAA. So don't give up on a guy if you bet him and he doesn't look good early. Like I said, the race doesn't really start till May. June. There's a dude a little farther down the list I got my eye on in the National League, James Wood. He's a 6'7" center fielder for the Nationals. He's hit 2 really nice home runs in spring training so far. I think the Nationals are kind of one of those teams that are maybe a year or two away from taking really large strides in their rebuild, but you never know. Like James Wood, Dylan Cruz, those are some cool guys that can, put up numbers if they get at bats. I I would be really interested in James Wood if I got some sort of signal that there was a chance he could be aggressively promoted. I'm not gonna say break camp with the Nationals, but if I got an idea that he was gonna be up in May, I think 50-1 would be a very good number for an outfielder like that. We saw Michael Harris recently win Rookie of the Year, coming up after the start of the season, being an outfielder. Then in the American League, to just kind of go through the top of the American League Rookie of the Year real quick, you got Evan Carter, who's the favorite in the AL. Naturally, I mean, he was a starting outfielder for the World Series champs. I think he was the youngest starting rookie outfielder for a World Series team since like Mickey Mantle. So you got that. You got Jackson Holliday, number 1 prospect in baseball. Likely going to be delayed about a month to kind of manipulate the ARB stuff, but he'll be up early. There's another name that's going to be a serious contender, and then Wyatt Langford, who's Evan Carter's teammate, potentially even better than him, potentially the next kind of superstar level player in baseball. But he hasn't even had a major league at bat yet, and he's 7-1. Going against the guy who we're comparing to Mickey Mantle. So kind of a lot of stuff going on in the American League. And that's not even bringing up Colt Keith in Detroit, Junior Caminero, the shortstop in Tampa, who's replacing Wander Franco, and then Nolan Schonel, who is a guy I'm pretty sure I have to go back and look at this. I'm still not 100% in baseball mode yet, but I'm pretty sure the Angels drafted him last year in the draft in June or July, and then promoted him to the majors before the end of the season, which is incredibly rare. He's 18-1. And there's Kyle Manzardo, who is a first baseman for the Rays, got traded to the Guardians. He's a guy who's going to get a lot of at bats, kind of checks a lot of boxes for me in the playing time. Keep an eye on him at 18-1. But the American League Rookie of the Year race is really fascinating because, off the top of my head, I see 7-8 guys who are, legitimate contenders, and that's not even kind of looking down, farther down the list so far yet.
Well, Jason, go ahead, Jack.
No, I was just going to say, just to recap. So you're currently shopping for MVP, Cy Young, that sort of thing. You're holding off on Rookie of the Year shopping until we know a little bit more about who's being manipulated with their service time. And what about regular season wins? Have you been actively shopping those at all?
Yeah, I mentioned my favorite one. I don't think this is going to surprise anybody. I'm just trying to pull up and see what the current number is right now. FanDuel's clicked on something. They're trying to get me to accept a promotion now. It's not what I wanted. Do you have the Angels win total in front of you by chance? I'm trying to pull that up.
I do not. Tom, do you have that?
I think it was 72.5. I have to pull it up to check again. But the Angels to me, like, I looked at the lineup they're putting out around Mike Trout, and it's as sad as it usually is. But I think they're just lying to themselves about their pitching staff and their pitching staff's ability to compete with other potential playoff teams. I think it's going to be a sad and disappointing year for the organization that squandered, one of the best players in baseball history. I expect them to continue to squander the other best player in baseball history. Yeah, 72.5 under -115 right now. Prove me wrong, Angels. Just prove me wrong.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for being with us here today. Thank you so much for talking some spring training, some futures markets, and getting us ready for the baseball season ahead. It has been a pleasure. I'm sure we'll be checking back with you plenty during this summer as well. In the meantime, where can people find you and all the great stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. As baseball season gets underway, I'll probably be talking about more baseball. It's just been like I said, it's the end of February. It's still slow time. Like I got to get acclimated, and give me another week or two to really get moving and finding all the bets. It's such a long season. I feel like I don't need to run out there and just grab a bunch of futures this year. There'll be plenty of time to build positions, and I'm very excited for Ohtani being on potentially a playoff team and, being right down the street from me. So it should be a lot of fun this year.
Yeah, it should be a very fun season indeed. But for now, that is going to do it for us here. Of course, as always, don't forget, leave us that 5-star rating and a review if you will be so kind. It really does help us out. If you like us, tell your friends, have them listen to the show as well. If you don't like us, tell your enemies, trick them into listening instead. In the meantime, of course, you can also head on over to unabated.com, check out all of our fantastic tools that we have for the Major League Baseball season ahead, from props to money lines and betting. It's a whole suite for you to use. Unabated.com. Check it out today and follow Jason at Spreadapedia. That is going to do it for us here. We will see you next episode. And as always, best of luck and let's cash some tickets.